Hey everyone, in this video we're going to show you how to draw a pumpkin. So grab your pencils and let's get drawing. So we'll go through each step of the process and give you some facts along the way. We'll start at the top and work our way down, and we'll just go nice and slow and just make sure that we do a really nice drawing for you. So we'll start with the stem, and the great part about the stem is that you can actually draw the stem in any kind of direction that you like, as long as it kind of goes from bottom to top, and typically the stem will be somewhat wider down here, and then at this part over here it'll be kind of similar in thickness. So you could do like different pencil strokes like this until you're happy with it. You might also want to just get a couple other pencil strokes like this. So what happens is this is kind of equidistant across, but as you go down over here you might want to be a little farther away, right? Because what we're drawing with the stem are these different kind of crevices that kind of go down, right? So hopefully that's clear. And again, you can make them a little bit, what's the word? Just a little nature-like. You know, that's what pumpkins are kind of like in nature anyway. So we want you to draw like that as well. So yeah, so basically this is kind of the stem, and this is of course just the outline. We're really going to make sure we clean this up later. I just wanted to kind of show you what this looks like, you know, in a quick format, right? So that's the top stem. Did you know that pumpkins are actually fruits and not vegetables? And the main reason is because they have seeds, right? So if you know that if it has seeds on the inside, that's essentially what constitutes a fruit. So fruits, and in the same category of gourds, which includes watermelons and winter squash. So those are basically the same types of gourds. You have seeds on the inside. So think of it like a watermelon. Like basically, it's very similar to the watermelon in the way that it is. So seeds on the inside is a fruit. We're gonna do the outer part, and this is kind of similar to other drawings we've done with fruits and round structures. So we just basically wanna go and curve it around. So you can do one giant swoop, or you can also just piece by piece, just kind of bring it around. For me, like I just like to go bit by bit because I'm doing this video for you, and I wanna make sure I show you, but I've got the camera above, so I can't really get my head on top. So I'm actually drawing from, it's hard to explain, but I'm just drawing from a bit of a distance farther back. So there are times when I want to just put my head right on top of the drawing, but I can't do that when the camera's there. So it kind of makes for an interesting dilemma on my side, but you don't have to worry about that. We're going to keep this drawing going and basically just round this out quite nicely. So I think for the most part, that's pretty good. I'm a bit of not a perfectionist, but I can be a bit tedious in the sense that I do want it to look quite realistic and quite well. So, you know, I tend to kind of keep it going and keep adjusting. So I don't know if you're the same way or not, but another thing I wanted to tell you was that, I don't know if you knew this, but pumpkin pie actually wasn't served at the traditional Pilgrims' Thanksgiving. So there was an old, I think it was 1621 Thanksgiving, kind of known to be the traditional sense of Thanksgiving. Actually, pumpkin pie wasn't served because if you think about it, there was no butter or flour or, you know, not even an oven to make pumpkin pie. So, so basically, you know, old kind of, what's it called? It's an old kind of old wives' tale, if you will, about the pumpkin pie at the old first Thanksgiving, but kind of interesting to think about that. When you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Like there was no like tools for baking and ovens and flour and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, really quite interesting when you think of that. Yeah, think about that. We're gonna draw the lines. So some of these lines will basically go from top to bottom. And like other drawings we've done, as you go away from your center line, these lines will actually get a little bit closer together, and it's very natural, so you don't have to really, there's no mathematical piece behind it. You can just really just get these lines drawn and then again, as you go away from the center line, these lines will typically get closer together. So hopefully you're seeing that come together. Now, I know some of these lines are lighter than others. I could also just go back and darken up some of them as well. Maybe for your sake, I know I've got this bright ring light on to kind of brighten up the page, but sometimes the pencil gets lost when we kind of do our drawings. So we're kind of stuck, you know, sometimes we get comments like, I can't see anything. And sometimes we want to go really dark. And anyway, that's kind of how we have to deal with the lighting here. But you can see how these lines are coming together. So around the center, you might have a line right around here that kind of is straight. I won't draw it straight because I'm actually going to draw, I mean, I could, let's see. I think what I might do is actually just get right here, I might actually get a line just that goes down like this. So although I didn't necessarily draw a straight line, my middle line is right here down the middle. So just because I have two crevices over here, in this sense, one over here, my center is still around here, right? So what you're going to do is you might want to get another one right over here. Okay, you'll get another one over here, and you'll get maybe a couple more over here. So I'll speed this part up. We'll do some cleanup and we'll do some line cleanup and just kind of fix this a bit, and I'll meet you back shortly. So stay tuned. I'll speed this part up. I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. We basically just did a lot of cleanup in terms of getting these lines looking right. And we're going to clean it up even more. I just wanted to kind of make sure my foundation was right for you guys, making sure that everything looked, you know, as neat and clean as possible. So did you guys actually know that, you know, we talked about the Pilgrims before the break. So Pilgrims actually, although they didn't have the pumpkin pie, they did like pumpkin beer. So pumpkin beer might be trendy today, but you know, at the time, basically, like, the malt wasn't easily accessible. So at that time, if you think about it, the pumpkins were actually used as a fermenting sugar, basically, to make pumpkin beer. So pumpkin beer would have been actually very, very common at that time, and something that you would have seen perhaps, you know, all over the place, you know, for the Pilgrims and at that time. So really interesting if anyone ever kind of quizzes you on that, say, actually, yeah, you know what, the Pilgrims, believe it or not, did actually have, you know, pumpkin beer. And they say, yeah, right. And you say, yeah, well, the malt wasn't really accessible or easily available. So it is actually true that pumpkin beer would have been something that's, would have been very common, actually, believe it or not. So what we're going to do here is just maybe get the stem drawn just a little bit better. In order to draw the stem, what you probably want to do is maybe each of these lines that go down, you might want to create a little node over there and just maybe get the pencil going like this. So the node over here kind of implies that this piece is a little bit farther out, and that's, you can go dark because we're going to darken this up. Little node over here. So we'll do that. Probably get a node over here. And then of course there's kind of a backing as well. So purposely created that backer as well. So just to make it look as realistic as possible, you can just get this kind of wavy like pencil drawing over there. And if you want, what we can do is we can actually get a lot of the lines moving back from this point, right? Because this is a real separator from the actual pumpkin face to the stem. And the stem is in fact actually quite dark, so there's nothing wrong with getting your pencil going and just in the direction of the stem. Just get your pencil lines moving back, back, back. And then we'll use some shading and we'll use some smudging and just kind of get this drawn and darkened out. So we'll do that. We'll kind of keep this moving. In fact, maybe we'll speed this up like we did before and just kind of get a good pace going so you're not in it for this whole haul, if you will. So we'll speed this up, we'll do the stem, and I'll come right back. Okay, so we're back. We did a lot of work on the stem and really trying to pull all of this, the lighting, the shading, all of it together. It's not easy. We're trying to create, a realistic piece over here that's kind of protruding forward, a couple other pieces around this side. So you really want to make sure that your shading is kind of spot on, if you will, as the old saying goes. So hopefully you're there. Hopefully you're drawing along. If you're watching, that's fine as well, but we'd love to kind of know where you're at, love to know how you're doing with all of this. The stem is really important because it kind of sets the foundation and the tone for the rest of the drawing, doesn't it? So if you can get your stem done, quite realistically, then a lot of the other drawing really comes together quite nicely. So the stem is just chopped off, so the top is usually just kind of, you can draw it really roughly, if you will, because usually just chopped off like that anyway. Yeah, back to what I was saying was like, how are you doing? Are you drawing along as well? Is it going well? Are you having trouble with it? Like, let us know. We'd love to know how you're doing. So what we want to do is build upon this and really just get the shading done. So each of these guidelines that we did before are crevices. Each of these lines represent a crevice in the pumpkin. So really what we want to do is darken up each of these lines and actually get some shading to the left and to the right. So what we'll do is I'll do one for you, and then we'll probably quickly do the others. So what you do is you darken up the line right over here, right? So this line here, for example, pick anyone that you have. We darken it up, and we try to get this line going right up to the top. But around the stem, what you want to do is you want to get this line a bit curved. The top of the pumpkin is curved, so why wouldn't this line be curved? So what you do is you get the line kind of, actually I want to even round this a little more. You get this line curved out. Yeah, that's a lot better. If you can curve out your line, it'll look a lot better. So this is what we're doing. And there's nothing wrong if you feel like your line isn't curved enough, like I just did. You can widen it, you can change it. There's no problem with that. Now, the question becomes, how do we make this look more like a crevice? All you have to do is hit it with your smudge technique. If your smudge technique is your finger, great. If it's a smudger, whatever you have. Now, you don't want, I think there's some dirt got in there. You don't want to smudge too much where things just start looking a little wild, but you definitely want to smudge to the point where, it really does look like a crevice line, right? Now, if you're worried that it doesn't look quite right, you can go back with your pencil and just add in a little more lead to the left and to the right. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm purposely showing you how to do that. Now, if you do that all the way to the bottom, you can do that right to the bottom. So if you do that, you want to make sure that the middle still has enough lead in there in order to make sure that when you smudge, it looks right. Now, what I recommend is grabbing a nice dark pencil. Doesn't have to be the sharpest, but definitely not the dullest, and get that line in the middle. Now this part, you have to be very careful and finicky, because you want to be meticulous in how you get this line in, because this is going to represent the middle of your crevice line. So if you can get this middle line done well with the dark, it'll look even better. So go slowly. I'm purposely going slow. I'm not going to rush this for you. Right? So that is dark right in the center of the crevice, but you can go back and just add a little smudge technique to your drawing as well. So that's just one out of many different pieces here. So did you know that the first jack-o'-lanterns were not actually made out of pumpkins, believe it or not? They were actually really made out of things like turnips or potatoes. Really, really interesting. It's a well-known fact if you look it up. So definitely look that up. The first jack-o'-lanterns actually were not actually pumpkins. I think that came later, and there might even be a whole legend of why the pumpkin was used. But you look it up, check it out. I mean, I think you'll find it quite interesting to kind of see that. Now, at the top over here, there is a lot of white. Now, the thing is, you don't want that to stand out and look almost like out of place, if you will. So what I would suggest, if you're in the position that I'm in, is add some pencil shading to the left and to the right of this top area. Follow your lines down. Don't go side to side, and make sure that you have enough pencil on there to do your shading, right? Like you definitely want to make sure you have enough, especially at the top. That's what I was trying to hint at as well, is I think I said don't draw side to side, but you can definitely smudge side to side at the top. So we're basically looking at this one line that we did and just looking and identifying, are we happy with it? Do we feel the need to maybe adjust it or change it? I think over here we could use a little more. I'm just looking from a couple different angles. There's different lighting in here as well. I can grab something like a 7 and just add a couple extra lines. You see, this process seems tedious, doesn't it? But it's really what makes your pumpkin look like a real pumpkin when you're done drawing it. I mean, I can't tell you how many pumpkins I've drawn over the years, but it really, really, really does make a difference. So I hope you put enough time and effort into this part. Now, what I would say is I'm probably going to just quickly speed this part up and we'll do the rest. It might take some time, so kind of bear with me. Maybe I'll check in with you midway. But let's do the other lines, and I'll speed this up and I'll meet you back shortly. Hey, I'm going to jump in here really quickly and just let you know, do you notice that once I draw my center line very dark, I just take a little bit of the pencil and just put some shading to the left and to the right, but it's a bit random. There's no real rhyme or reason why I do it that way. I just literally put a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right, because what I do is when I implement my smudge technique, that's when that lead is going to be moved around. So I'll literally take my thumb or my finger and just kind of move this up and down, and that is why I do it that way. So if you're kind of watching this and you're wondering, like, you know, why is he kind of putting on some pencil to the left and to the right in a messy way, it's because once you smudge it out, the lead doesn't really stay in one place. It moves around, doesn't it? So that's kind of why I do that. I just thought I would jump in during this sped up portion just to kind of share that with you. If you're watching this kind of come together, it's obviously starting to look like a real pumpkin, but you might be wondering, like, how do I get my lines to look like that? And that's exactly how you do that. So the other thing I'll tell you is that as you move away from the center lines, as you go back here, the amount of fray in your shading will actually become less and less. So you'll see that over the next 1, 2, 3 lines. I'll continue speeding this up and I'll be back with you shortly. Okay, so we're back. We did a lot of work with the shading on the left. We'll finish up the right side in a bit, but hopefully you're really enjoying how this is coming together and you're liking it. You know, we have a lot of nice tones and a lot of different shading. Did you know that over 1.5 billion pounds of pumpkin are produced just in the United States alone every year, 80% of which are picked within 1 month of the year, which is October? And obviously for obvious reasons, essentially, you know, very, very pumpkin-y time of year. Now, a lot of people think, you know, oh, I can pick my pumpkin and I can kind of make a pie with it later, right? Like I can make a jack-o'-lantern and then I can make a pie with it, but you actually cannot make a good pie with the same pumpkin that you picked as a jack-o'-lantern, because a lot of the pumpkins that are grown for jack-o'-lantern use are actually not very tasty. Like they're just grown for volume, right? They're really just grown out of volume, and they know you're gonna pick them, cut them, put a little smile on them, and light a candle. So actually a lot of pumpkins are not grown for flavor. If you do want a good pumpkin for flavor, for a good pumpkin pie, I think there's one called the Cinderella pumpkin, and I think another one's called sugar pie pumpkin, Cinderella, or I think even one called pink banana squash, but I'm not sure about that one. Anyway, what I'm doing here is I'm actually shading more on the left side than the right. And the reason I'm doing that is because if you're looking at the pumpkin this way, you will probably see more of the curve, if that makes sense, on the left. And therefore you want to get a little more darkness to the left side. Now, hopefully that makes sense. If not, just follow along and you'll kind of see it come together. But what I want to do is, as we go away from the center, I want more of the shading to be visible on the left of my crevice line. So I purposely waited to this part to explain that to you. And now we're basically going to put on these crevice shadows to the left. It has to do with angles and visible angles and lines of sight. I mean, if you look at a pumpkin, you can kind of see the reason why, but that's what I'm doing right now. So hopefully you're kind of watching me put this together. So let's even work on the top as well. And that is getting these shadow lines to the left. The other thing is the shadow lines will actually be bigger around the center of the pumpkin and smaller at the top. So up here, you really just have the slightest bit of shadows that exists. Let's just make sure our lead kind of moves around the page a bit as well. So anyway, I just wanted to chime in and just kind of let you know that's what stage we're at right now. I think in a second we'll finish off the right side of the pumpkin, but you know, you can kind of see this starting to come together. Definitely you can go darker around here where my pencil is now. Okay. And always just make sure that you're keeping an eye on your lines. You know, you don't want them to smudge too much. If they do, you can just fix it up and just ever so slightly just get those lines back. Now, pumpkins are never perfectly round either, so if your pumpkin has a bit of curvature in the line, don't start erasing it and thinking it has to be a perfect circle. I mean, yeah, pumpkins are somewhat round in shape, but that doesn't mean your pumpkin has to be perfect when you're drawing it. That's not really nature's way of, you know, growing a pumpkin, so don't try to draw your pumpkin that way either. So I'm going to do a little bit of shading as well. You can kind of see, or you can tell that I did put some more shading towards the bottom, and the reason I did that was just because naturally there's going to be a little less light at the bottom. So if there's less light at the bottom, you're going to have darker tones, and that's all I really very easily did down here. So let's just carefully do that. So I think what I'll do is I'll keep this video flowing, and what I'll do is I'll do the right side once I just finish some of the shading down here. What I'll do is I'll do the right side, and I think at that point we're probably going to be very close to being finished. So stick along with me. I'll speed this part up just so that you can kind of have a quicker viewing experience, but we'll finish up these sides, the lines on the side, and get this drawing done. Stay tuned, I'll be right back. I tend to do a lot of smudging in my drawings, so I tend to go off the drawing. It's okay. You can just go back and erase anything that you feel you need to clean up, and that's what I'm going to do right now. You could kind of see I just went through the entire drawing and just basically did the lines, did the curves, did the crevices, like all of that stuff that I spoke about from the very beginning. And this is what we have right now. So I think for the last 5 minutes, we might just do a bit of cleanup. And it's always a good idea to clean up your drawing because things shift and things move, and you know, your drawing might change, you know, positions, and you might have different lines that you started with. Like, for example, on the pumpkin, you might have lines that have moved. For now, we're just doing the erasing. So for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. Did you know that National Pumpkin Day is October 26th? So October 26th is National Pumpkin Day. If you didn't know that, keep it in mind. It's always a good day to celebrate. Another thing that I like to do, just to make sure I show some, like, I guess, curvature on each piece, is hit each piece with the eraser just a tiny bit, ever so slightly, and then wipe that away. The other thing you can do is you can take your pencil and just get some lines going from top to bottom. Real pumpkins do have these lines that kind of go like very visible, so don't feel like you have to hide them, but some of these lines that kind of go like this. So I think as we finish up the drawing, this is a great strategy to make your pumpkin look a lot more realistic. So get these lines on there. Don't be afraid to put them on there. And again, just clean up as you feel you need to. The more you finesse it, the better it'll look. In theory, you know, make sure that your lines on the outers are very clear, because this is the outer part of the pumpkin. So the outer line here should be clear. It should be clear that that's the edge of your pumpkin. And as I said at the very, very beginning, pumpkins are not round, perfectly round. So don't be afraid to make your pumpkin, you know, look as realistic as possible. So that might mean you might have some curves that sometimes they're straight, or they appear to be straight. They end up having a bit of curvature to them, but not necessarily round. That's what a real pumpkin looks like. I mean, at least the way I see it. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind as you draw your pumpkin, and keep that in mind with any kind of natural item that you draw. So it could be fruits and vegetables, it could be anything in nature. As you draw things like that, keep that in mind. So the other thing that I definitely like to do is just make sure that I have enough shading at the bottom of my piece. And the reason for that is just because shadows will typically form at the bottom of especially round items. I'm grabbing an 8B and just pull from the bottom out a couple dark lines with this dark pencil. This will really help show off some of the shadowing in your drawing. So this is what I'm doing. The last thing you want is to have not enough darkness at the bottom of your pumpkin, because you really are showing a natural light source like this. So this is why I'm doing this. So hopefully you're doing the same. Start at the bottom and pull it up. See how I'm doing that? I'm kind of letting off the page as I go higher. So from the bottom, I'll go darker and then I'll lightly move up. This is how you get some of these realistic shadows at the bottom of your drawing. This could be for a pumpkin, this could be for an orange, any kind of fruit and vegetable that you want to draw that has curvature. We drew a piece of garlic before, and we kind of used a similar, although not exact, we used a similar process. Again, as I move away, I definitely want to make sure that, you know, I kind of show off some of these lines that I drew before. I used the 7, but you can also just quickly put on a few of these with an 8. Just like that, just to make it just like nature, right? This is what nature does, is it creates like a realistic pumpkin. So quickly hit it with the eraser. We'll do the same over here. I think we're almost done. I don't see anything else that's really too concerning or anything that's like a little too quote unquote off, if you will. So I think the last tricky part is, and I don't know, you can't see this on the camera, but I just ripped the eraser in half. Just getting an ever so slight line just on this piece and maybe even over here might just help give you that curvature. So this is all I'm really gonna do to finish this off. I think that's it. I really think we're there. How are you doing at this point? I'll say, you know, leave a comment and like, subscribe, share, whatever you need to do to share this art with whoever you like. Pause it, rewatch it, rewind, whatever you need to do to learn how to draw this. Or maybe you're not even drawing, you're just watching for the visual. That's great too. Either way, I just want to say thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you being involved with this. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.